States of America, and whatever it is you need to ask, you ask, and it needs to be on that form. Now, it may sound crazy, but imagine this. If you knew that every time field 10 was the birth date, if you know any doctors, and I know many, my brother-in-law is a doctor, I know a lot of doctors, there are a lot of medical mistakes, and there's a lot of time and expense that goes into just taking information from one form and putting it in another. So, and I would tell them, you have 2 months to develop it, and if you don't, the members of Congress are going to do it. Now, if that doesn't strike the fear of God into them, I don't know what does. Because we do need to get practitioners and those in the healthcare field to the table and say, what is it that you need? Let's empower you to do that. To cut through some of this red tape. I don't think we're ever going back to Dr. George or Dr. Coffin with the black bag, but hopefully we can be smart about what we do. And we can find ways to streamline. And I do agree, we do need to deal with behavioral health in this country. It's part of the reason I was proud to stand up in the legislature to fight to keep the funds from the tobacco settlement to be used to reduce smoking in this state. We need to take on agricultural subsidies. Big agriculture receives billions of dollars of subsidies. The net result of those subsidies has been development of things like corn syrup in everything we eat, which research now indicates is a huge part of the problem of obesity. So we have to look at an integrated program. We need to make sure our young people are getting exercise in schools. There are a lot of different components to it, but again, I think the way is forward, not back. I don't think we can go back to the black bag, but we can be smart about what we do.
Other questions? Anybody else have a question? I'll go back right here in the front. Then I'll go back to you again. Just go back right here, Sally. There's a microphone coming right there. This one will go to Elizabeth first.
Thank you. A great pleasure to be here. My question is about foreign policy. Actually, in November is very significant, not only the election in the U.S. and all the congressional and state level, but in China also is once a decade change of leadership in China. We've seen quite a lot of slowdown in the economy, actually, including in China, less than double-digit growth in the last few quarters. And we've seen a lot more political unrest in China, who are the people who are fighting for the basic, better working conditions and less overtime. People are getting more vocal, but we see little changes in terms of seeing the regime allowing people to have more democracy. So as an elected official, how do you balancing the importance of the trade or the business with China, at the same time supporting people who are using peaceful means to fighting for the basic human rights and share the American value at the same time? Thank you.
No, it's an excellent question. And we did discuss this. I'm glad you raised this again today because William raised this at a debate we had in New Britain on Saturday. China is an opportunity and a challenge for us as a country. There's no doubt about it. China has become one of our largest trading partners. It has been an engine for worldwide growth. And so for outlet for American products, in fact, I was just hearing this morning on the radio that GM just sold its millionth car in China. And that 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there had been 1 million US cars sold in China. That figure is now 5 million. So it is an enormous market for US goods. But I think the US always has, and I would stand strongly by, the US taking a moral leadership position around the world as a defender of human rights in our country and everywhere else. And that poses particular problems in China, I think, around the free speech issues in particular. I think our internet regulations, how we speak to, say, Google about its behavior and allowing shutdown of access. I do believe in a lot of ways the free flow of information is in some ways the most powerful tool. And if you look at what has happened in China, if you look at what's happened in the Middle East, continuing with American technology to provide free access and open access to information, to empower people in every country around the world to advocate for their own self-determination, is how we became the great country we are. And we need to continue to live by those standards around the world and support human rights and self-determination efforts, including human rights in China. Thank you.
In 2007, one of the coolest things in my life happened when I was tapped on the shoulder and someone said, "Andrew, you've just been named an Aspen Rodell Fellow." And I said, "What the heck is that?" An Aspen Rodell Fellow, being named an Aspen Rodell Fellow meant that I had been blindly nominated to participate in a nationwide fellowship which brought together 12 young Democratic leaders and 12 young Republican leaders from around the country to spend 2 years together on a fellowship, traveling around the world and meeting on several occasions in Aspen, Colorado, to formulate policy vision. And part of that experience meant that I went to China, India, Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. But for the purposes of answering this question, let me focus on China. When I traveled with this group to China, we met with leaders of the dissident community who raised a central question, which is going to be more and more prevalent as time goes on. How can a country experience economic freedom without experiencing political freedom? At some point, the forces of economic freedom will necessarily lead to an appetite for political freedom. And that is going to play out in China with the Chinese people. And America obviously has a very important and sensitive relationship with China. They've become a huge trading partner, but I think we always have to claim the moral high ground in recognizing that political freedom is something that all of us should want to see for every person on this planet, and China shouldn't be an exception. So I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more instances. When I was in China, a small community was rising up because of environmental degradation close to home. Like Americans, people don't like when their rivers are dirty or their air is unclean. It doesn't matter if you're Chinese or American. If something's happening in your neighborhood, you want it solved. So I think it's going to be very interesting over time to watch this develop. We flew from China, which is the infrastructure is amazing, so modern, so sleek, and we flew into India, which has the most thriving democracy of almost any country on earth. India's democracy is people are engaged, and they make decisions more slowly because of the nature of democracy in India, but they have that sense of freedom, which I think as human beings, we all yearn for.
We'll be sensitive to their time. We'll take one more here, so I want to make sure we adjourn at 9:30. Anybody else? I'll go back to the corner in a second. Anyone else have a question? Was it the same question? Do you have a different one?
Again, it's a different one, but with a bit of a story. That the question is, why is it so important that the federal government be involved in so many areas of our lives when we were founded on the principle of allowing us to pursue our opportunity? The story being, my grandfather's generation, with wage and price controls during World War II, could not get hired to another similar job for more money, so the company said, we'll pay for your health insurance for you and your family as a benefit. Now that has become an entitlement. Same thing with education. I live in a town, same to you, Mrs. Esty, because of the education system. Now at the federal level, they're going to legislate what kind of education we're going to have individually. How can I afford to pursue my opportunities when I'm busy trying to answer all the regulations and buy the health insurance that's required at a federal level when I'm supposed to be able to make my own choices?
Andrew, start with you.
And I think that because the federal government has been spending at a rate which is clearly unsustainable, it doesn't matter what your political philosophy is, the math is pretty stark. And if nothing else, what is going to rein in the appetite of the federal government to control more and more of our lives, to have more and more regulations, to continue to expand its reach, is the economic realities of reining in federal spending. And what I have learned in Connecticut, another thing that I've learned in Connecticut is you have to start by reducing government spending. And I'm not someone who holds out that it's an easy thing to reduce government spending. It will hurt, but it will hurt a lot more if we don't reduce government spending, because then we're going to be brought to the precipice of economic calamity. So as American people, I think we all should be prepared for some sacrifice going forward. And part of that is going to entail shrinking the size of the federal government. And at the end of the day, I think that we will have a much more sustainable and prosperous future together if we can begin to control the size and scope of the federal government.
There is a serious math problem right now. You know, our spending currently is at 24% of our gross domestic product. That's in part because we've been waging 2 wars for the last 10 years. And we didn't pay for them as we went. We put them on a credit card as a country. We've never done that. Never done that. And then we didn't put World War II on a credit card. We bonded for it. We planned for it. And so that is part of the problem of where we are. And our revenues are at 17%. Now, the historical norm's at 20% for both. This is where I take an issue with Senator Roraback, who wants to extend the temporary Bush tax cuts with the hope that that will create jobs if we extend them to those who are doing quite well. If you've checked what's happened with wealth in this country in the last 20 years, that very top level has done quite well. And so I believe we have to have a balanced approach. I think it has to be balanced. I advocated for this at the state level, that we need to have some revenue and some spending cuts. It's going to have to be brought into equilibrium. How you do that and when you do that matters a lot, because if you cut back too quickly, take a look at Great Britain, take a look at England right now. You know, England has had unrest because their austerity package went in so hard and so fast, they actually lost jobs. And so, again, how you do these things matter. It is going to need to be balanced. It is going to be smart. I do believe we should let the Bush tax cuts for millionaires expire. I don't think that is leading to the kind of additional job growth that we need. But we do also need to be looking at the spending side. We absolutely do. And that is part of what the next Congress is going to have to do. I did it in the legislature. If you watch the ads in the summer, you will see that I got harshly criticized for proposing cuts at times when you need to do that. So I'm willing to take the heat. I have, and I would stand up proudly in Congress to make wise choices to get us on a better course. Thank you.
We thank both Elizabeth and Andrew for being here and representing the kind of approach, regardless of what party you're in favor of, which candidate you ultimately vote for. Commend them both for their run and for the kind of energy and intellect they bring. So please give them a warm round of applause. And let me thank again the chambers who helped sponsor this. Thank you all for being here, and be sure the purpose of all these forums we're doing is to make sure everybody does vote.